We as a My Singing Monsters composer community tend to predict what monster class the next update will bring, but what if it brought something else, something more important? What we truly need from an update is some good old-fashioned maintenance, and that is what we will be discussing in today's video. So, what do I mean by maintenance exactly? Well, to put this simply, there's a ton of stuff the My Singing Monsters Composer app could use to become a better music software, if it can really be defined as one. To keep it simple, I'll break this video into categories: music, bugs/issues, organizing, and new features. Some sections may have less talking points than others due to my knowledge and opinions in some areas, so with all that in mind, let's move right into the first category. Starting off with the category I probably have the least to say about, let's talk about the organizing within the MSM Composer app. As many of us already know, an issue that the app struggles with is the room that the actual island itself has. As of right now, it is quite full with the monsters it currently contains, so I had some ideas on how to fix that issue. One way is by creating multiple parts of the island, similarly to how the majority of Dawn of Fire's islands have several segments of the island. This might be the most difficult option for the dev team since it would require redesigning the majority of the pre-existing island, but it could help a ton with space, while also looking really cool. My second idea on how they could free up space on the island is by combining the duplicate monsters into one monster. If you didn't know, for monsters who have the ability to play both held and staccato notes, they receive two different monsters to play each type of note separately. By removing the feature, it would clear up a lot of space on the current island, meaning more monsters could be added at a later date without having to drastically change anything. However, I personally would not prefer this option. This is because having duplicate monsters can actually really help add depth to your songs in multiple ways. But in the end, the question is if it is worth sacrificing this feature for new monsters or not. Now, let's talk a bit about the bugs and issues that the app has. I'll mostly be talking about the small little nitpicks about the app, but there is one very fatal bug which I have to bring up first. This bug has been around for way too long at this point, and it truly needs to be addressed. This bug I speak of is a glitch that is very deadly to all of your MSM Composer files, because if you encounter this bug, it glitches out via a weird sped up version of your song due to the song getting corrupted for an unknown reason. By the app doing this, it leads to the entire app becoming unusable, forcing you to reinstall the app and losing all of your songs. In more detail, I asked Dr. Toon and Mixmaster Corn, both MSM Composer YouTubers who experienced this bug, about their experiences with it.
Typically when it happened for me, it was specifically on Android. It has a low but possible chance of crashing on iPhone though. It usually came from my cache being fullish, or the app remaining dormant for a while. The screen would load, then crash all in under a second. Thankfully I have a new phone, but it's not well optimized for Android at all.
So what happened is I was doing the death report cover that I said I was going to do. I was like 95% done with it, and I was going between apps, between My Singing Monster Composer and YouTube, to, make sure that it all sounds good to me. And I'm not sure if it's whether I was in edit mode and the song was on play, and then I switched apps. So it's possible that it's because of that, or it's possible because of the resolution of the video that I was watching, which was the death report video, but it was the Toby Fox topic version, which is the one that he posted himself on his YouTube, and that one has like a different resolution on it. It's not like a regular YouTube video, so it might have glitched My Singing Monster Composer on that. So it's one of those two, I think. I'm not really sure, but the result of the glitch, I'm not sure, is that the app started running incredibly fast. It was it sounded really glitchy, and the audio was twice as fast, and I was kind of freaking out. Actually, now that I think about it, I wasn't in edit mode. I was in presentation mode. Yes, because while it was glitching, I was like, what the hell is going on? So I clicked edit mode to go back to see maybe it'll fix itself, but it didn't. When I clicked edit mode, like the app just froze, and I mean, it fully loaded, but I wasn't getting in edit mode. Like I just stood in presentation mode. So I was like, what the hell's going on? Okay, so I closed the app, tried to reopen it, and that's when it hit me that like every time I tried to open the app, it would just crash on me, like over and over. Every time I tried to load, it would just crash. And I did everything I could to try to fix it. I offloaded the app, I just restarted my phone, I did like everything I could, to the point where I even like tried to get all the files that I had in my Ski Monster Composer through my computer, like, plugging it in my computer, getting the files out of it so I can at least keep those, but I wasn't able to. So at the end of it, I had to re-download the app, which did fix it, but I lost everything I had in the process. My theory on the reason why that works is because the file itself of Death Report got corrupted, and that made it so that the app wouldn't, it would crash the game every time. And then when I re-downloaded it, the file wasn't there anymore, so that I could open it. But that's just a theory, I'm not sure.
But on a not so serious note, there are some other small issues that I'd like to bring light to as well. There aren't many that I personally know of myself, but there are a select few that kind of trigger me a slight bit. The first one being the highlighted measure error. It is a visual mistake that was introduced in the 1.3 seasonal update, where every transparent blue covering was accidentally shifted a few pixels to the right. It isn't anything super grave, just something that was not an intentional design. Another small issue is the 5+ note error. Before the 1.3 seasonal update, it was working as it should have been, where when you tried to place down the 6th note for a monster on the same beat, it gave the egg a red filter. But now the translucent red filter seems to be in a square shape instead of just covering the egg. Once again, this isn't a huge deal or anything, just a clear mistake that was made when the dev team was pushing out the new update. And finally, the third small issue is when you actually boot up the app. When you do so, it is meant to play a snippet from the beginning of the Dawn of Fire medley during the loading screen, but now it just plays some ambiance. And as you might be able to guess, this also came with the 1.3 seasonal update. It's weird how all these slipped by, but hopefully these get fixed in the next update we get. When it comes to an app based around making music, you'd expect the instruments to sound good and in tune. And for the most part, this is the case for the MSM Composer app, but not to the full extent. There's a select few monsters that just don't live up to the expectations they created in the main app, and I'll divide them up into many categories of flaws that they have in common. Double notes, double scale, off key, and just generally low quality. Let's talk about double notes first. What this means is when a monster receives a note in the song, it plays 2 notes instead of 1. Examples of these are Maw and Nebulob, where every note Maw says Dee and Nebulob says Shubba. I feel like this concept serves zero purpose because the only time this would be helpful is if you compose with a super slow tempo, which almost no one does because you can just double it to make it faster. A very simple fix to this would be to just shorten it down to 1 syllable. Maw doesn't need to say Dee, it can literally just say D, and that's the extent of it. On the other hand, we have monsters which have double scales, which means they just sing the same octave twice, but with a different line. Examples would be Cybop, Octopus, Smoochel, and Kazillion. Oh, and I haven't forgotten that there are monsters that are a combo of both this and the previously mentioned double notes. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Grumpire and Punkleton. But anywho, this is such an issue to me because it feels like it is limiting the monster's potential, and that the dev team really did them dirty. I don't have any ideas on how they could change this, but I hope they do someday. Now we need to talk about off-tune monsters, one of the most annoying parts of the game. There are a few monsters that are just so out of tune they are near impossible to use whatsoever. This includes Kazillion, Geode, Hula, and Blabbit. You don't need to have an ear for music to know that all of these monsters sound absolutely atrocious when used within a song if not executed properly, and Geode literally cannot be fixed because of how good it is at being slightly off tune. For Hula and Kazillion, they have a bad case of the not playing the note you assigned it virus. Let me show you what I mean. Yeah, it is really bad, and I genuinely don't understand how the dev team heard this and thought, yeah, it's good to go, let's add it to the game. And then Blabbit is a whole other can of worms which I'm not even ready to open yet, so let's just move on to the final subcategory. What I mean by general low quality is just a monster that works well in the song, but just isn't anywhere near as good as it could be. Ones I personally find to fall under this category would be Araculele, Jelbilly, Yule, and Sponge. For Araculele, it shines in the middle of the scale, but when you get too high or too low on the scale, it just sounds like garbage. For Jelbilly, it's generally really good, but some notes just don't sound right, and I find that Jelbilly's notes extend for too long, which can cause musical conflict. For Yule, its jingle bells have always been iffy to me. It's weird having jingle bells being played in different tones, and I personally think that Yule's vocals should have taken up a lot more notes on the scale. And finally, Sponge. Sponge is a great monster, but those high notes, roughly anything above the high D, sound quite bad, and it's a shame. Now let's talk about new features, probably the category I'm looking forward to talking about the most. There are a ton of features I think we need which would make the app so much more enjoyable and user-friendly. Something I would personally like to see is a new maximum of 16 beats per measure be the time signatures. This would be pretty huge in my opinion because that would allow us to have 8 measures of 4/4 and 1 measure of 16/2. This is such a big deal because it would make looping parts of songs so much easier to copy and paste instead of having to use 8/2. But outside of that little adjustment, there are some changes that would be even more worthwhile. One of these things would be the addition of bass clef. If we think of this app as an introduction to music making to people who want to start learning music, showing how the bass clef works alongside treble clef could really help with that. It would also be very helpful to people who are more used to working in bass clef opposed to treble clef. However, the thing I'd like to see most from this edition is dual tracks. What I mean by this is how on some sheet music, you have both the treble and bass clef present. So by having something like this in the MSM Composer app, it could increase efficiency while you work on 2 monsters at once. This is just a rough idea, but it seems like it has something going for it. Next up, there are 2 technical features I'd love to be slightly tweaked, the tempo changer and the undo button. For the tempo changer, I would love to see the ability to change the tempo via typing in the number. As of right now, we are forced to hold down the plus and minus button until we get to our desired tempo, so having a more efficient way of getting into a specific tempo would be really nice. As for the undo button, I'd like to see it be able to undo more than just a certain amount of actions because right now it only does so many undos. Secondly, what's an undo button without a redo button? I personally think that it would be really nice to have a redo button so that we can fix any accidents we may make with the undo button. The save track button has a load track button, so I think the undo button deserves to have a redo button. Now here's something I'm really passionate about. I think that we need tempo changes, key changes, volume changes, and pitch bends, so let me explain why. Tempo and key changes both are a very fun thing to mess around with in music, so being able to have this ability in the Composer app would help with arrangements of songs that have such elements. Sure, we can get the same effect by creating a new song, but the people who don't particularly know how to edit videos together would be left nearly helpless. So by allowing key and tempo changes, it would make composing and arranging in the Composer app a lot easier. When it comes to volume changes, I don't mean a simple volume adjustment on a monster for the whole song. I mean like an overall volume adjuster, along with an individual monster volume adjuster as well. This would allow specific monsters and the track as a whole to fade in and out, along with adding more emotion to the song. I just think that generally adding new features that can add depth to the way you compose is really valuable. And finally, pitch bends. It would be game-changing if we got this feature. Pitch bends sound so nice if executed correctly, so having an ability such as this one would be pretty awesome. I have a sweet spot for well-used pitch bends, so I'd love to see how it could sound used on some monsters. Pitch bend could just add so much to the world of composing and arranging in MSM Composer, so I'd love to see something like this get added in the future. And finally, I'd like to talk about one of the greatest features that they could add to this app, rudiments. In particular, we need 8th notes, 16th notes, and triplets. These are the 3 biggest types of rudiments, alongside quarter notes, which we already have. So they just feel like something that should be in the Composer app. It just feels a bit silly after a while having to double the tempo just to get the ability to use 8th notes, and then triple the tempo just to get triplets, which is a whole different story. Needless to say, having this freedom to have more basic rudiments would be so helpful in the long run. And with all that being said, that's about it for this video. If you happen to agree or disagree with anything said in this video, let me know down below in the comments section. If you think I forgot anything, feel free to let me know that as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.